welcome to Diarden. I'm Brad Wolf, and I'm here with Mike, and we're talking about Baldur's Gate 3.
Super
So
excited.
you've been,
Yeah.
you've been doing Baldur's Gate 3 since like the first thing that was available.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe not like whatever stuff they had before early access when it was sold on Steam, but I the day that it came out early access on Steam, I bought it and started playing it as soon as I could get my hands on it. So yeah, I'm really excited for the full release. I have the game's not even fully out yet, and I already have 100. And I looked at my Steam page. I have 111 hours so far. Played through it multiple times. Kind of dabbled with all the classes and stuff. And yeah, so that's going to be my knowledge. Is I have the game knowledge, and you have all the Baldur lore knowledge, and together, hopefully, we can give people an insight into the game versus D&D 5e and how it compares.
Yeah. So I thought we'd be kind of comparing like what the Baldur's Gate game is like to, the video game is like to play versus the actual gameplay of Dungeons and Dragons, and even compare a little bit to the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, because I played both of those back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Played the hell of a lot of those.
Which I didn't play either one.
So did you ever play 1 or 2?
No, I haven't played either one. I've seen like on it's called GDQ, Games Done Quick. I believe I've seen people speed run with some of the Baldur's games before. And that was pretty interesting. But yeah, it's not to like, put you on blast or anything. It's kind of dated at this point. I feel like it's probably awesome mechanics still, but like visually, it's nice to have a new Baldur's for people to kind of get into if they're into like the D&D fantasy stuff. And this is like, spoiler alert, this game is awesome. Just I'm gonna say that already. But yeah, you can kind of also like compare it a little bit to the 1 and 2 that you played back when they were out. And yeah, my only experience of 1 and 2 was I think it was GDQ speedrunning. I saw the person like had a bard and just ran through the whole game with invisibility or something. I don't know. It was cool to watch, but yeah.
I definitely remember Baldur's Gate 1. There's at least one whole level that you can skip almost all the content.
Yeah.
Like the main quest goes through this one building, and if you just, as soon as you get to that chapter of the game, you just go straight to that one building and then do the main quest, you skip a ton of content. So yeah. I could definitely see how you could speed run it for sure.
That's already like a similarity in D&D is like, laid out a whole area, had a whole story, whole campaign, and then your player's just like, what's that? Whew! Just zoom past all the cool fleshed out parts that you worked for hours on.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's like when your players get really pissed off at you, like you almost do too good of a job as a DM, and your players get really pissed off at the big bad.
Yeah,
and they just want to go straight after the big bad.
Yeah,
and ignore all your content. It's exactly like that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know playing Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 was very much like playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Like like the mechanics of the video game were about as close as you could get to actually playing the role-playing game.
Right.
So is that how Baldur's Gate how number 3 is with 5th edition?
Yeah. So with you on the first two, did it have like text and like stats and like did it use a D20 system at all, or was it all like a separate thing?
Yeah, it used it like okay. you could actually see like when your character attacked, it would tell you like what your attack roll was.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah, in D&D, or sorry, in Baldur's 3, there's it's the actual same system too. You straight up see like when a skill check is comes into play when you're talking with dialogue, or you come up onto something that needs to be moved with athletics, which all those skills, every single one in 5e is also in Baldur's. And you also have like the proficiencies and stuff, but you straight up, in the middle of your screen, it pops up. It's a D20. So it's exactly the same skill sets as 5e. People will be very familiar with it if they've played, any D&D at all. And then it rolls, and there's random choices. There's advantage. It adds your skill proficiencies. It even has like an option, and this is actually really nice because it would be kind of annoying and cumbersome to always be casting guidance, which is also in the game, the cantrip guidance on characters.
Right.
Right before you roll, you can like there's like a little drop down menu of just like what additions you want to add. And yeah, you can cast guidance in the moment, which is kind of nice, even though, technically doesn't make sense because all of a sudden your cleric's in the background just like oogity boogity as you're talking to somebody helping you out. Because I think it has somatic, maybe it doesn't. But yeah, so it has that. I believe it will also have enhanceability. In my playthroughs, I didn't take that spell because it just, in the early access, they just introduced 5th level and 3rd level spells. So I'm assuming that will also be in the little addition thing, but there's not like a you get advantage by having another player in your party like also try to be part of whatever's going on. You get advantage from a lot of times it's like I think background related and class related. A lot of those times. So like if you're a wizard, or if you use, there's a character named Gale that's a wizard. If he like has this tome and it's like this magic tome to open up, he gets like an advantage because he's a wizard. Whereas if I've used my other characters and I've like saved, gone back and seen how different characters interact with things, which is beautiful. The fact that every type of character that interacts with something, whether it be dialogue or objects or situations, it's different. And I've tested that too. But yeah, he would get advantage because he's a wizard and he has all this like background wizard and straight up said advantage from wizard. Or if I used my bard character, I have really good skills, but I didn't get the advantage because it's not my like forte, the arcana, right? So it was interesting that they, added that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I've heard and seen online is like there's story elements that are strictly based on the different characters. So depending on which character you're using and what their class is and then what their background story is, right? That informs how the game interacts with you.
Right. And they I don't know the exact number of backgrounds you can choose from, but all of them are from the player's handbook. They were trying to include as much stuff from the player's handbook, which I guess is right off the bat just a way to say that yes, this is very much like D&D is their past Larian Studios, their past titles, Divinity. They kind of use their own world with their own rules and stuff like that. It was kind of D&D adjacent. It was very similar styling. But now they have the D&D licensing to just include all the actual player handbook stuff. So they tried to include as much player handbook stuff as possible. So yeah, off the top of my head, I remember there being Sage background, Acolyte, Outlander, Criminal, Sailor, I think was one. Stuff like that, where it's like, it's stuff that's in the book that you can just have to add your proficiencies to skills that you want. And then there's also, I think 12 classes is all the classes besides Artificer and Blood Hunter. It's all the base classes, all the regular classes, I should say.
All the players handbook classes, yeah.
And then they're not including all of the subclasses. I think each character or each class has 3 subclasses that they'll be able to choose from. Besides cleric and wizard, they get like 7 and 8. So I think there's like 46 total subclasses across all the classes. So very cool to be able to customize in that way.
Yeah, I mean that sounds almost exactly like everything from the player's handbook because the wizard had 8 subclasses, one for each wizard school in the original player's handbook.
Yeah,
and then the cleric had all the different cleric domains, which I think sounds like 7.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would make sense. Wow. So like Eldritch Knight and champion fighter and all that.
I know that I haven't looked at all of the specific ones. I know that there are, and I think they kind of handpicked from other things too, because I know that, I know there's Battlemaster and Eldritch Knight. I don't know what the third one that they're adding for the full release. But like for Druid, there's Circle of the Moon, Circle of Lands, and then they're also adding Circle of Spores, which I think is from a different book, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah. Circle of Spores, I think, is Well, it originally showed up in Ravnica, but I think it eventually ended up in Tasha's too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because there are in the original player's handbook. There's only the 2 moon and land.
Yeah.
But then within land, you can pick all the different, like, terrain types. Like you can do coast or mountains or plains or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's only 2 subclasses if I remember right in the actual player's handbook.
And I think they also have all of the races too, as well as maybe even some extra ones. I'm not entirely sure. I think I saw I don't know if the player handbook has multiple styles of tieflings. I saw multiple types of tieflings and also multiple types of drow. I think it's like a background of the race for like the drow or something like that. Because I looked through the 2 and they didn't have any different stats or anything, but it had a different description of like who they follow or something like that. Yeah. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because tiefling in the player's handbook, if I'm remembering correctly, there's only the 1 tiefling, but then eventually, I think Sword Coast, and then I think it was republished in Xanathar's maybe.
Yeah.
They had all the different types of tieflings depending on the which layer of hell you were connected to.
Yeah.
And so as you said, there's different types of drow. That's interesting. I wonder if that's related to the changes they've made to drow lately, because they've what's his name? The author who writes the Drizzt novels, Salvatore. He recently expanded the drow lore in the newest book.
Mm-hmm.
So they not all drow are beholden to Loth, the demon, goddess of spiders or whatever she is.
Yeah, and I think they went away with the I actually didn't make a drow the whole time. I think I made a half drow at one point, but I don't think I ever made a drow. But I think they went away with the light sensitivity and like some stuff that's not the greatest for gameplay. To limit the character, they'll see that and they'll be like, "Oh, this sucks." It's kind of cool to be a drow. I want to be a drow all the time. I don't want to, be allergic to the sun or whatever. So it is nice that they have homebrewed some stuff in the game to try to balance things and try to make things just more inclusive, I guess, for like how you want to play your character and not feel like you're getting dampened. Even with stuff, I don't want to go too far because you probably have, those questions anyways in the future, but even with spells, they've also balanced some stuff out and changed things to make it make more sense for video game, like I said, with the guidance stuff and all those things. So yeah.
So does Bardic Inspiration work like guidance where you can?
That's another one you can do. I was racking my brain I know there's one more, and yeah, Bardic Inspiration is one that you can do on the fly. Yeah. So, which that just makes a lot of sense. It's kind of annoying to it would be very annoying to before every encounter be all right, switch to this character, open the abilities, do this on that, target you. Okay, back to my cleric. Do that. Oh crap, we only have 2 rounds left. Rush in. It's it'd be a lot of micromanaging to do all that stuff instead of just whoop, menu, you're good. So
yeah. Now, so it's turn-based combat, right? It's still like the old Baldur's Gate or the Knights of the Old Republic stuff, where if you run it at full speed, it looks kind of live action, but technically it's all turn based.
Yeah, it's live. Yeah, it's live action. I think there's still animations. It's not just dead, right? It's not just frozen. There's grass swaying and people are kind of moving a little bit. But yeah, it's turn based. There's initiative, so initiative matters, agility matters. Yeah, it's basically the same thing as D&D. I'll be honest, I'm trying to think of differences in the style of combat turns, and it's the same as D&D. I guess it's also each enemy has also their own initiative orders. I know a lot of DMs are just all right, bulk enemies and then the players, whereas I think everything has its own turn based. But that is one nice thing is that I think in the earlier stages it was very slow because the AI or whatever the enemies run off of that, they would kind of choke up with their decision making a lot of times, or get caught up and stuff. So it's you'd be waiting for a couple minutes sometimes for decisions for the enemies. But now it's sped up. It's a lot more fluid than when it first started. So, yes, turn-based. To answer the question in a long form, turn-based combat, yes.
And is it like you can just let it like free roam, like free roll from like one turn to the next, and it kind of feels more fluid, or you can change the setting to where it like pauses on each turn?
It only pauses. So the enemies are pretty fluid. It shows what they're doing. They move and then they go. For you have, as far as I know, you have to decide what you're doing with each character every time it goes to the character. I don't think that there's any sort of like automatic, like just post here and cast fireball on whatever you can, or fire bolts on whatever you can.
Right.
Maybe they'll add that. I don't know if they would, but also it doesn't take a whole lot of time. Like it's pretty good with its targeting of just like, it even has like a quick access menu where you don't have to go into your spells or your cantrip menu. It's just like you click it and then you click an enemy and you confirm it, and then it just rolls the attack and then damage if you hit and stuff like that. So yeah.
So like in comparison to say like XCOM, like that's one that like it pauses with every character. And then you have to use your move action and your attack action kind of thing. Is it so it works kind of like that?
Yeah, action economy, I guess. Yeah. So it's interesting. There's like they've also kind of homebrewed some stuff there too. So they have a jump action, which this is also one way that they've balanced out strength. Because I feel like in like tabletop, like I think most people are in agreement that dexterity is stronger than strength most of the time,
right.
if not all the time. Whereas in this game, strength actually has a decent advantage to dexterity. You get a lot less skills, but there's I think it counts as a bonus action where based on your strength you can jump farther, right? And you can use your bonus action to jump, which like it costs less movement than to actually move there. So if you have high strength, you can just like go farther than dexterity characters. So there's a little advantage there, which is kind of nice and really fun.
So you're kind of like using your movement to move and then your bonus action to jump.
It's like a pseudo like dash almost, if you're not a rogue. I wouldn't say it's probably that far, but it actually depends because there's a Githyanki or Githyanki. How do you say it?
Yeah, Githyanki.
Yeah. So there's a character that's part of the party pretty early on, or you can just make your character that race, and they get the jump spell as like a psi-kinetic thing, just part of the race, which just amplifies your jump. So that if you're a strength character, now you can, it's actually almost comical. And I think that I heard that they're nerfing it, but you could straight up move, like jump farther than the 30 feet movement that you have, and then move, the rest of your movement as well. And I saw people also doing this with the, one of the rogue subclasses that they have is Thief. And they homebrewed Thief to be different where instead of whatever, it's like you can use an object as a bonus action. They just get 2 bonus actions. Like they just get an extra bonus action. It's very strong. But pair that with a strength-based Githyanki, which has 2-sword or 2-handed sword prowess anyways, you can make a strength rogue that with 2 bonus actions and the jump spell leaps like skyscrapers away. It's silly, but it's also fun that there is like a weird power gaminess to it that you can find stuff like that, which is going to be really fun because they are, I don't know if I already told you this, they are adding multi-classing as well. So trying to figure out, I don't know if you knew that. So trying to figure out how to balance multi-classing. I think the level cap at just the first stage of this game is 12. But that still opens up a lot of possibilities for people that already are familiar with power gaming or will find something based in the game off of like an in-game ruling like, oh, yeah, that thief subclass, I can pair that with this other subclass that's kind of different than 5e and then have something that's just like ridiculous, It already is ridiculous, but it's even, I'm sure people are going to find some weird stuff out there.
Yeah, well, and that actually like segues directly into the next question I was going to ask. Is that because I know you've gotten more like playtime with fifth edition as a player versus
Yeah.
as a DM. And I know you're pretty good with the character build, min maxing.
Oh, sorry.
Power game kind of
Real
stuff.
quick, I forgot the other action economy is that they also do the homebrew, like you can bonus action potion yourself, and then also they have and this is something really nice, and I think they're adding to D&D. Every weapon has like a specific ability, like a sword, a double-handed sword has pommel strike as a bonus action, where you can like bonus action like bash them to try to daze them or something, or a bow and arrow has like crippling shot. So they're also adding those kind of interesting mechanics to action economy as well.
Kind of like I forget what they're called, the weapon features that they're adding to the new edition of D&D.
Yeah. So sorry though, I just want to get that in there before we move to the next thing you were saying about playtime in 5e as opposed to a DM.
Yeah. So you have a lot more time as a player in 5th edition than I do, and I know you're pretty up to speed on like power builds and multi-classing and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of my question. I think you had already started to answer it. Was how does that compare as far as how does all that fit in to Baldur's 3 with being able to like multi-class and match character traits with racial abilities and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're gonna see it because it wasn't available in the early access. Early access, you were only able to go to level 5, and
Okay.
there was also no multi-classing yet. So it's all gonna be a new frontier. But like I said, with those classes that have a little bit of a difference in them, with the thief getting 2 bonus actions, or I can't off the top of my head think about what other classes have a different flavors to them or added abilities or whatnot. But I can imagine that for the classes that like or the subclasses that we don't know too much about yet, or haven't been able to play, I'm assuming that there's probably going to be some broken mechanics out there that'll probably be patched out. I know that they're homebrewing a lot. I haven't looked into it that much, but I've heard that they're homebrewing a lot of the monk, because we haven't been able to play the monk yet in early access. And their wording was just to balance it out to make it more powerful. So we'll see what that means. I feel like if they make it more powerful and you pair it with a thief subclass and you get an extra bonus action and do two flurry of blows, as a monk every turn, as long as you have, key points, that sounds pretty strong. As far as like, I would say the most common like power gamey type of thing is like take 2 dip into Warlock, right? You'll obviously be able to do a lot with that. I know that my first character that I'm going to probably go with is a Bard, and I probably eventually will do a dip in the Warlock, also because it has like a mechanic in the game that I've heard about that you can actually like converse with your patron or summon them to like, get some intuition about a situation, or even in early access, you get summoned to a mansion to try to solve one of the main problem of this first act, or maybe the whole game. I don't know. And he offers you help, and it's like obviously this like demon or devil patron, and it's like it's going to be really interesting to play a warlock or a cleric or a paladin, and possibly even a druid, and be able to see how much interaction you can get talking to your deities or your patrons. But I went on a tangent. What I was going to say was that the 2 dip in Warlock, you won't be able to have access to the Hexblade. They're not including the Hexblade in some of the newer stuff, which is an obvious like power choice a lot of people take. But there's plenty of stuff out there. I mean, people are going to, take a dip or 2 in the fighter, in the barbarian. I think making a druid barbarian is going to be awesome. It's all going to be there as long as it's like a base player handbook type of thing. And on top of that, I was also told by a friend that someone already made a mod to include the Hexblade class. So there's people out, if you can't find what you want and you're like, man, I really want to try that subclass because, this would be so much fun. You can probably just go to Nexus Mods and download it and, play it even more how you like it. Or maybe they'll add those things in the future as like little installations for DLC, which is another. Yeah, I'll go to that in a bit. I'll talk about that later. There's a really funny thing that's happening right now in the game developer space. That's actually a good thing in Baldur's 3, but really telling for a lot of companies out there.
Yeah, it would make a ton of sense it's like leaving money on the table if they don't like do a Hexblade Warlock DLC.
Yeah, or just like they like straight up do like
everybody's gonna want it.
Tasha's update, or like stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then obviously we're gonna get the new edition, the 2024, 1D&D, whatever we're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
So
that'll
that could be an
Baldur's
update 4.
As well, or that, yeah,
yeah. Well, because the original 2 Baldurs definitely had expansions, which were almost full games, like compared to other games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Baldur's Gate expansions for 1 and 2, were a whole adventure,
Yeah.
So I could definitely see, a ton of, DLC DLC stuff coming out for 3. That would make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so from what I've seen, there's several different pre-made characters to choose from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each of those have their own storyline. Like one of the pre-made characters you can choose from is a warlock.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their patron and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then in the previous Baldur's Gate games, you can make your own character, and then you had all these companions that would go with you.
Yeah.
But this looks like you can make your own and then have all these pre-made characters as companions, or you could actually just play as the companions.
Right. So yeah, at the beginning of the story, and this isn't super spoily because it's been out for so long, so I don't feel bad about saying this. The beginning of the game, you start off on an Illithid ship. You had a thing planted in your brain, and you're trying to escape, and they're also being attacked by dragon riders. And so your ship is crashing, and there's chaos going on. But you create your own character however you want them, backgrounds, all those things, and then very quickly it's almost like the beginning of a campaign, and that's what I kind of like to feel about it. It's just like you wake up in this strange, crazy place. There's chaos happening. You have to get out, and you eventually meet the pre-made characters. But it's also like it's almost like meeting the party at the table. The Githyanki fighter, and then also on the ship is a trickster cleric named Shadowheart, and you only meet those two at the very start, and then after the ship crashes down into a beach, you meet very quickly a wizard that comes from a portal, and then you very quickly it's like the beginning's shaped in a way to be kind of linear, where you're not going to miss these places. Like you have to pass by them to progress into the game. There's other things you can do, but you're going to, walk in front of the gates of this druid grove that's being attacked by goblins. And then you, in the fight, meet the warlock character that you were talking about. And then I guess you technically could pass up one character. There is a rogue on the beach as well, where if you bypass that whole side, I think there's a way to just there is a way to go around it. So technically you could miss one of these characters at the very beginning. But yeah, there's a rogue on the beach, and there was also a barbarian that is like bleeding out because they're being chased by cultists or something like that, next to a river later on in the game. But yeah, it has all these pre-made characters, but there's also, this wasn't available in early access, but they talked about it in their, they call it like panel from, no, I don't know what they called it, but it was like a live stream just talking about the game. There is going to be like a
panel from hell or something like
maybe
that.
Maybe it was that. I can't remember. Yeah. But it was, they did say that there are going to be like mercenaries or hirelings or whatever they call them, where if you don't, like the, I think because it's already at level 1, Shadowheart being a cleric, but is locked into being trickster. You know, like, shoot, I want a life cleric. You know, I don't know when it'll come into play, but I think you can, just hire a life cleric mercenary to be part of your group. Now, they'll probably have dialogue options, because that'd be weird if they just like stood and were just robots the whole time. But I highly doubt that they'll have any background story. They're probably just like, hey, I'll work with you as long as you got the coin. And then they just like do their own thing, right? No more dialogue.
The hirelings will be more like a Skyrim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the sidekicks or whatever you got in Skyrim.
Yeah. And as far as like pre-made companions, so there's the ones that you were able to play with was a fighter, a rogue, a cleric, a wizard, and the one that you haven't been able to play with was a barbarian that you meet pretty early on. There's a moon druid that you have to eventually save that becomes the companion as well. And then there's two other companions that one of them is actually from an earlier Baldur's game as well. Actually, I know both of these are, I think. One is a ranger. Hold on a second.
Minsk, the bald guy with
the
purple tattoo on his face.
Yeah. Which there's that person, and then there's also another druid, I think, that is also like multi-classed in the previous Baldur's game, supposedly, but I don't know if they're going to be multi-classed off the bat in this one.
Is it? Trying to think. There was, I think her name was like Imoen or something like that. There was a mage character that was kind of key to the first two stories.
Yeah,
and there was like an elf.
An
elf mage that was pretty, like, one of the more popular companion characters.
Jahara? Does that ring a bell?
Okay, yeah, I think that's the elf character.
Yeah. So there's that. Halsin is a druid that you meet again. Minsk, you just mentioned. The barbarian's name is Karlak. And then there's also, I actually didn't realize that this was going to be a companion. There's a person that you meet also early on that is, I think this is the same person. I could be wrong. But you meet them in a goblin encampment, and they're like definitely like evil, like they're bad. Named Minthara, which I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe if I remember right, it's a evil character inside of the goblin encampment that you reach very quickly in the game. So that's interesting that and again, why I played through the beginning of this first act so many times is that I was testing out all the routes of play of like purely good. All right, second one, more chaotic, stealing more stuff. I even did a like more evil run, which I'm not like just a huge fan of because I just don't like it, but I still did it just to see what it was like. So it was really interesting to see just in this first act of the game, like how different the interactions can be and all the different dialogue options and all the different, the things that your companions approve of and disapprove of and what they fight over if you're like grouped, because you only have a party of 4 at a time, including yourself. And so if you have like two characters that clash, like they even said in their panel that Karlak the barbarian doesn't get along very well with Will the warlock, and he's like, they straight up like Will like wants to murder Karlak or something like that, or like, and if you don't, like, he has a problem. It's like there's going to be tension depending on who you camp with, who you acquire, who you run around with. But with the hirelings, if you just have a group of hirelings, maybe they all get along. I don't know. Just like, oh yeah, we're just here for the money. Cool.
Yeah. Jahira was the character I was thinking of. It was in the earlier game. I just looked it up. She's a half elf fighter druid.
Yeah.
I think Jahira and Minsk were the two of the most popular companions from the original game. Like, as far as like the characters that people chose to include in their party most often.
Yeah. So I'll be surprised if they have a companion that is multi-classed off the bat. Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. So,
I mean, they'd only need to be level 2 when you find them, right? 1 level of each, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing is like the companions that you meet automatically acquire whatever level you're at too.
Okay.
But you can level them up from 1, so you can still choose their
You can make
routes.
all the choices
Yeah,
for them.
yeah.
That's
So
cool. Yeah. But yeah, I had heard that the warlock companion, you know, they have like a devil patron,
mhm.
and that relationship causes problems for the other companions. Like that's an issue.
Yeah.
And that you know that the game in some ways almost expects you to kill off one or two of your companions at some
Yeah,
point.
and it'll be interesting if there is, like it's crazy how much time and effort that they've put into this game and all the dialogue options that you can do and succeed and fail or find different routes around, you know? That's like I said, I've played it through multiple times just to see the different styles of gameplay I can do, or even with different characters that have, you know, different backgrounds or different classes and see how that interacts with whatever I'm trying to solve. It's insane how many routes of things you can do. It's very much like D&D in that way. It's literally it feels like it's a choose your own adventure book that you're playing through, like D&D. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it'd be interesting if there is a way to make Will and Karlach get along eventually, right? Um, so yeah, maybe there will be.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Well, and the other thing too is, I mean, technically, game mechanics wise, right? In fifth edition, there's nothing in the rules that says your if your warlock turns against their patron that they lose their power.
Hmm.
Like my kind of understanding, the intent is you've already gained this power. So like story wise, if you like, in fifth edition you're playing a warlock and you want to betray your patron,
Hmm.
and you could then like role play a redemption arc and then multi-class into paladin, right? And
Hmm.
have your character like turn away from their patron and become a oath of devotion paladin or whatever, but you'd still keep the stuff that you were given by your patron originally, right?
Right.
So that would be a way in game to kind of play out that almost like Spawn from the comic books, where he gets his power from you know from the demons, but then he turns against them and becomes a hero, but he still has all his hell powers, right?
Yeah.
That you could. So I'd be curious to see how that works. Like if you could take the warlock character, the pre-made one, um, and then you know multi-class into something else and kind of turn away from the patron. Like if there's
Yeah.
an option where you can choose to
That'd
to
be
fight your patron or something like that.
yeah, that'd be interesting because like I I know that there's a lot of so because there's so much dialogue choice and options, they released this stat and people were like, what? Because they hear so it was that it will include 174 hours of cinematics. So when you think cinematics, you think it's like, you know, something playing out and you're watching, you know, thing. But they were also including like dialogue stuff. Um, so, but that means that there's like a lot of different dialogue options. So yeah, I wonder if like, you know, if you take Will, who is, you know, trying to free their patron from something so that they can get out of this pact. There's also there's things prerequisites that not stat prerequisites to multi-class. They got away with that actually. They're removing that. But I think there are like little quests that you have to do or go through or like experience to like become, you know, a paladin multi-class. Like you were saying, it can't be just like you're out, you know, on the town and be like, you know what? I feel like being a paladin, you know, that type of thing. So it'd
Right.
be interesting if you can have your pre-made characters multi-class like that and have it, you know, interact with their own storyline. Like if you went through Will's storyline and they're just a warlock and they do all that stuff and they, you know, free their patron and get rid of the pact or whatever. If that's one way, or if there is another way, and through some weird quest thing, will you make him, you know, multi-class into paladin, and then he finds a way to like free himself without even having to deal with the patron or something, you know, like something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very interested in all the routes you can take with all the stories. It's gonna be one of those games that you play through many, 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 many times if you're interested in all the different routes you can take.
Yeah, I feel like there's somebody, maybe a handful of somebody's that's basically going to make Baldur's Gate 3 a full-time job for like the next 3
Oh
years.
yeah, absolutely. And they'll have content
And
for it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you could dedicate a whole YouTube channel to just Baldur's Gate 3 and all the different characters and all the different
Yeah.
storylines and
I mean, here's another point of chaos. Halcyon, the druid that is a moon druid, you can romance any character, right? His style of choice, he turns into a bear. Imagine what that romance is like. They hinted at that in the thing, and they said in the stream, showcasing the game, they're like, yeah, we got our TikTok account banned. We didn't realize that they had the guideline for this specific thing, but now we do. So there's some weird stuff in the game, and they're like, we just want people to be able to do whatever they want, and that means anything, right?
so you could wild shape into a bear and then engage with another character in romantic dialogue.
Yeah, the words that they said was, let us know when you see that Halcyon romance option. They just said like that in all capitals type of thing. Yep. So I mean, I'll let people explore that. I'm gonna go a different route, I think. But it's fun that that they are really passionate about having it be true to the D&D experience to the point where it's like ridiculous with all the power gaming and all the other things that they include with it. So I'm very excited.
That's mind blowing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now I have heard that they included the Oathbreaker Paladin.
Yeah. I played and I made sure to figure out how to do it. Well, it actually didn't take long to figure out how to do it. Sorry, go ahead, finish the question and I'll answer with my own.
That was my question. So
okay.
You can't start as an Oathbreaker.
No.
You actually have to start as a paladin and then do something to break your oath.
And
that was my question.
And depending on what oath you start as, and the two that you could play as, and paladin might even get 4, including Oathbreaker, or maybe that is just their 3. But there's ancients and there's devotion, and there's different ways to break your oath. Ancients, I'm not too sure, but devotion, if you lie, it's a way to break your oath as well. Or you're like, you say something and then you do the opposite. I don't know. I ended up just like, I was thinking to myself, like, I'm going to take this devotion paladin and murder hobo at the very beginning. So I go up to these people that are just like, they think they caught a dangerous person, which is a member of my party. And they're like, and I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'll deal with it. And I failed my roll. And then I'm like, well, yeah. And I just like, killed them. And instantly it was like, your oath is blah, blah, blah. Go back to camp to, think about what you did. I don't know exactly the words that it said, but it was basically like something happened with your oath. You feel a change. And then you go back and yeah, there's this like, I don't want to spoil it too much, but there's just this like dark knight standing in your camp, just like waiting for you. And you talk with him and it's like, you can, use this power to become something new. Or you can keep your devotion for a price. It's like some gold thing, I think, even. I don't know. But it's like, it's like, oh, I didn't realize that I had tenets to stand by. This is actually paladin-like, and I broke my oath, and I can become this Oathbreaker, and I did. And it was kind of cool. So yeah, it has Oathbreaker, but you have to do, certain things to get to that point. So I also, that makes me wonder as well, for certain subclasses, I wonder if you'll have to also do something else, which I would hope not, because then it would be like kind of cumbersome if you're like, totally in the other area of the world. And it's like, oh, you have to go to Zarisburg to fetch the, like, I don't know. Yeah. So I don't think it'll have prerequisites for anything else, but that one specifically was actually really cool to stumble upon. And I didn't know how to do it. And it just happened because I broke my tenet. Right. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great that they included that in the game, since that's just such an integral part of the paladin character.
Yeah. And they definitely like homebrew things too with some of those subclasses, like other newer things, like just to balance things out and make things feel stronger. Like I think the Oath Paladin had their divinity like heal things around them. Devotion had something else that was different from the book, I believe. And the instead of like straight up advantage. That's another one they're adding. That was the third one I was thinking of. They're adding vengeance. They're adding Oath of Vengeance. But yeah, Oathbreaker, they get this like necrotic damaging thing as their divinity. And then I think they can raise dead later on or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
and then I heard one of the companions starts with like no memory and like bloodlust.
Well,
Is
that's not a companion. That is,
okay.
they straight up added that as a story background option for your own character. And they
Okay.
specifically mentioned, like, we added the murder hobo style of character play. So this is a character that they literally just want, you have a blood, it's called like the dark one or the dark something, where it's like you just feel this bloodlust all the time and you just are perpetually wanting to kill everything. So that'll be interesting if you can have companions at all, or if it's going to be like a lone wolf situation. But yeah, that is an option to start your character on instead of the normal customization and all the stuff. It's like the background is just your murder hobo. Like, but it's, I mean, I'm assuming it's gonna have an interesting story because it gets its own storyline that's a little, I mean, probably a lot different than the base game. So
Yeah. And so the the images I've seen of that character, it's like a dragonborn.
yeah, I
You don't
think that
so it doesn't have to be a dragonborn.
no,
You can make any character you want, any race, any class.
yeah, I think
and then
it's
you just
I think it's all the same. It's just the background changes, which changes your quest, and you are drawn to just kill everything. So,
yeah, so you're just infected with this bloodlust, this darkness that makes you want to murder.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
So it's like the perfect excuse to just murder hobo your way through the game if you want to.
Yeah, no, that's literally the words that they use. They were like, yeah, we wanted to just add for people that wanted to do this. We have a background for you that has its own like mechanics and story thing, right? So yeah,
very cool.
Yeah,
and then so the other question that I had is how much of like Baldur's Gate, the city, is in the game?
in early access, you don't actually ever get to the city itself. You're crash landed in just kind of this beachy area. There is like small like villages and towns, and there's a goblin encampment. There's a druid grove. There's kind of like a crypt area. There's a lot of like overland stuff that's in between places. There's a swamp with a witch. There's like kind of standardy trope things. There's a point where you find like little thieves' dens and a place that leads into the Underdark. There's a whole Underdark system, and then that also really cool area has myconoids and like all these other cool things. And there's a myconoid city or village, I should say, not a city. And then it goes to the Grimforge with the dark dwarves, whatever they're called. Yeah. Cool stuff. There's like more automaton stuff there. A lot of really cool stuff. But you don't actually ever get to Baldur's City in the early access. I have seen previews of the game. The whole city is there. The whole city, Baldur's Gate, like you get to the city, and there's a lot of talk about there's even like tiny little quests that you find in the starting area where it's like, oh yeah, we're delivering this thing to a mage in Baldur's Gate, and you can, agree with them to split something, or you can steal it from them, and then you steal it from them, and it's like this bottle, and you can like have your wizard eat it, or you can throw it on the ground. And I did this. Spoiler alert. Cover your ears, whoever doesn't want to hear this. I threw it on the ground and it popped up an observer. And I was like, oh God, I didn't realize that was going to happen. And so, yeah, it was, or you can just take it to the city and sell it to the mage or whatever. And it's like all those, I just love the multi directions you can do with any, and that's like a small thing. That's like a tiny little quest that you can just pass by or whatever. There's that much detail and options into it.
That's crazy.
But yeah, in the early access, you don't reach Baldur's at all. You hear about it. There's quests that talk about it. But yeah, you will have to wait till the early or the full release on the, I think, 4th of August, to experience the actual city itself. And it looks really cool. And there's like automaton things there too. And it looks really expansive. And it's actually probably going to be one of the more overwhelming places because there's a lot of, a lot of people to talk to. And I think there's also like, I think they added something where it's going to be like a generalized, like, dialogue option where just because you don't talk to everyone there. You don't see, or maybe like illuminate people that have important quest things or something. I don't know. So, because it would be like me, who is a completionist and wants to get every nook and cranny. Very exhausting to talk to every single people to see if they have something, for me to do or whatever.
That'd be crazy. Well, now I know from the gameplay I've seen, there's like a highlight feature that highlights the things you can interact with, like when you're in the Underdark and it's kind of dark and you can't see stuff.
Yeah, it kind of shimmers a little gold thing.
Yeah. So I wonder if that would happen when you're in the city, like the people who have relevant information, if they would also light up like that.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes, I mean, it'd be cool to like, if it has like not like an exclamation point, I have a quest for you, type of thing, kind of break that up, kind of immersion in a way. But it would be nice to have a little bit of a direction in those big cities, but also have really cool dialogue options and possibly even like small hints of like a treasure somewhere or a tiny, errand to run or something like that. For all the other little NPCs or something like that. Because there are like, this is a druid run that I did, was speak with animals. And I was like, I'm going to talk to every animal I find. And they told me like hints of treasure nearby or things that was going on that I was like, oh, I already knew about that. But that's cool that this was a way to know that information first before, progressing on. So maybe, the characters will have dialogue that's relevant, but not like quest giving thing.
Yeah, that's so cool that you, as a druid, you were just talking to all the different animals. That's hilarious.
At first, I didn't even realize you could do that, and then I was like, wait a second. Speak with animals has to have a purpose. And so, I just talked with like every squirrel. There was a boar, a couple bears, some birds, and some of them are really funny too. There's a bard. I thought it was going to be a companion, but I guess it isn't. But there's some squirrels that I talked with in front of her playing, and she's like messing up the music, and they're just like, make it stop, please make it stop. And it's like just a weird, funny interaction that didn't have really much relevance, but just little things like that.
That's a very D&D thing though. Like that's something that, it sounds like the DM would make up on the fly. Like, yeah. The other thing, I heard that there are like refugees as part of the story as well. Is that something you run into
so that's one of the first like moral choices you pass by is the Druid Grove. There are a lot of tiefling refugees there, and Halsim, the bear druid that I was talking about with the romance thing, he went off to a goblin encampment or something like that. And he hasn't been back in a long time. He's like the leader. So like the second in command took over. And she's like a little way more hardcore. And she's like, all these tiefling refugees have to leave now, or, we're just going to get overrun with goblins all the time. They're chasing them down, blah, blah, blah. And so she's like also starting this ritual to like close off the grove with like vines forever or something along those lines. So it's like, you have the options to talk to the tiefling leader and kind of convince them like, oh, it's probably best if you leave, or you can bring them to your camp. And then they can like be in your camp. I don't know if it has any like benefits. Or you can talk with the leader of the person's trying to do that, and you can help them out with a situation and get their favor, or you can straight up kill them, or you can find there's some dirt on them that you can bring to air and like, politically out them, or you can go and rescue Halsim, and bring him back and have him assume control again. There's like, again, so many options, but it is like that is, I believe that's the only refugee thing I can think of, is at the beginning of the game. It's like these tieflings are in this druid grove, and they don't want them there. And
So my follow-up question to that is, so are the tieflings from Eltriel? Is that where they're from? Does it say in the game?
Eltriel. I'm not sure. What does that mean? What does that entail to?
It's a smaller city nearby Baldur's Gate, and that would be because that was the plot of the Avernus campaign. The what's the name of the Avernus campaign? It's like Descent. Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus is the hardback adventure for 5th edition. And the plot of that game is that the city of Elturel has been sucked into hell. And the survivors are who escaped, those refugees are coming to Baldur's Gate. So
Okay.
that would be a direct reference to that adventure.
So, and that's a
what I was
city.
curious
Is Elturel something different?
No, that's it. Elturel, yeah.
Oh, I'm just trying to read like a forum post. They talk about like Descent into Avernus. So in canon state of BG3, Elturel is back from hell, but Zariel is still alive, kicking and unredeemed.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it does. These people are talking about stuff that's going on in Baldur's 3, and they specifically talk about Descent to Avernus. So yeah, probably something that I missed, but yeah, probably.
That's very cool. So it actually connects to the events of Descent into Avernus.
Mm-hmm.
But that would make sense, even if Elturel.
Here's the lore that I see of Avernus. Hold on, I just saw it. How is Baldur's Gate 3 storyline linked to Avernus or linked to D&D? Baldur's Gate 3 takes place right after the events of Descent into Avernus. The holy city of Elturel disappeared from the Forgotten Realms and is descended into Avernus, the first layer of the Nine Hells. In our canon, it was saved by a party of heroes. The game is based on the 5th edition, and then it goes into stuff like that. So yeah.
Gotcha. So Baldur's Gate 3 assumes that, a group of heroes in that world played the Descent into Avernus and saved Elturel, but they didn't redeem Zariel, that's interesting because that's spoilers. That's the other, big plot point of Descent into Avernus, right? Like the first part of the adventure is to try to save Elturel, and then the second part is to try to redeem Zariel.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So in their canon, in Baldur's Gate 3 canon, the city was saved, but not the angel Zariel.
Yeah, who is also linked a little bit to the storyline of Karlach, the tiefling barbarian companion that you get, because those are the cultists that are trying to hunt her down, and they assume the roles of like these like Templars almost, but they're like, from that area, and they're trying to hunt her down. So interesting. Good to know about that. Because I remember Zariel as something that she said in her dialogue, and it went over my head because I don't know Avernus stuff. So
yeah, so D&D lore, right? Avernus was, as the first layer of hell, was like the temptation invitation to hell, right? Like, so Avernus was originally this like luxurious, glorious place to visit, and it was a way to tempt people into hell because it was, surprisingly, oh, this is hell. It's beautiful and nice.
That's how they get you.
That's weird. But then the demons from the abyss, right? They launched the Blood War, which is where the demons broke into Avernus. So the demons actually attacked Avernus and destroyed it. So now it's like this hellscape, like you would expect hell to look like.
Yeah.
And so Zariel was an angel that was originally sent to destroy demons. But over time she became so corrupted, she's now the like archdevil of the Avernus, the first layer of hell. So she's now the ruler of the first level of hell, but she's actually a fallen angel.
Okay.
Which is why when you play the adventure, you can redeem her. So that's interesting. So I wonder, that would be crazy, is if that was an option, like like a side quest where you could actually redeem Zariel. That would be cool.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it literally says here, the land of Faerun is in turmoil. Refugees cross the wilds, fleeing the hell-torn stronghold of Elturel. So, yeah, it has to be those tieflings are the refugees, and they're trying to find a spot to be. Because that's, it has to be that. And it just went over my head because I didn't know.
Yeah, that would absolutely make sense, right? If your city was almost destroyed by being cast into hell, I could see a group of obnoxious humans being like, okay, tieflings can't live here anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's a reminder of our terrible experience of almost being sucked into hell and destroyed.
Yeah. Cool.
That would be a very D&D kind of thing to do, right?
Yeah. I'm looking
That's
at
really
some
cool.
of the other lore on this page. It talks about Shar has the Mistress of Night has a prominent role in the beginning of this, or with your companion, and also Saloon or whatever it is, the opposing one.
So, is it Mistra and Saloon? Is that for the two goddesses?
The one I'm thinking of is Shar, the Mistress of Night.
Oh, Shar. Okay, yeah.
And then straight up says stuff about here with Avernus and Mind Flayers, Blood War, all the races. Yeah. So yeah, it straight up says like there's a paragraph about Avernus on here. So yeah, it's very much like you were thinking. Yeah. And then obviously it explained that this is after those events. So
gotcha. Oh, so is the trickster cleric, is she she's the one that follows Shar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't know a whole lot about deity stuff. And there's even a point where I had her in my party, and there was like this underground cavern that had a like kind of broken statue of Saloon. Is it Saloon? Am I saying it right?
I think so.
Okay. And there was like a chest there, and before I like opened it up, she's like, "Stop! Like, you don't want to mess with that. It's probably cursed or something." Like, talking trash about the other deity. And she actually would have gotten mad if I didn't pass a persuasion check with her. So it's like, oh, cool. I don't know anything about this. I just wanted loot. So
that's great. And then apparently, from what I've seen, the wizard character has like I'm
so interested about
with the Mistra, the goddess of magic.
Right? Okay. I probably maybe like skimmed over that dialogue a little bit too, but I'm very interested in that character as well. I don't know if Mistra has anything to do with this, but like there's certain objects that he is also very interested in, that like that bottle that I was talking about that was being transported to a mage in Baldur's 3 in Baldur's Gate City, Maine, proper. And inside of this chest, you can decide to deliver it or to split the sale with these people that are thieves. Or what I did, I threw it on the ground and it exploded and made not an observer. Maybe it is. What's the smaller version of observer? The
beholder, the spectator.
Yeah, I think it was one of those. It wasn't a full-on observer, but
it looks like a beholder, but it only has like 4 eye stalks or whatever.
Yeah. Or maybe it is an observer. I don't know. But there's certain magic items that he will be like, hey, so there's this weird thing about me that I need to absorb great magic from artifacts, basically to stay alive or whatever he's insinuating, or so I don't explode and take this realm with me or something crazy like that. And so, yeah, like that was one of the objects like he could take and he could absorb. And I'm just like, man, but I want to throw it on the ground. So, but like I did do a playthrough and I had him absorb every single object, and it didn't have enough for early access. So I think later on it'll, do something crazy maybe. But like that, I don't know if that has anything to do with Mistra, or like he even had a time where when he went unconscious in the party and during battle, a puff of necrotic energy goes up, and then it's like you have to go through these weird. He had like a fail-safe bag that's like, in case I die, tie my left shoe and do this. Is like a contingency spell that he had. It was like crazy. But yeah, I think I remember him talking about Mistra at one point, but I don't think it was like crazy important. He is definitely, his name is Gale. He is definitely the character I'm the most excited to learn more about. It is like, just seems like pure chaos. Yeah. So
yeah, I heard that he has a very convoluted backstory, so I'm curious to see like where all that goes.
That was another thing that was kind of nice, is they actually took stats on which characters were played with the most, and they realized that not a lot of people brought Will around because they just thought that he was not interesting. So they even like sped his story up. So like you'll be able to learn more about his patron and do the stuff with him earlier on into the game. I think even in the first act too. So yeah, it's gonna be really fun to go through all the stories of all the characters for sure.
Yeah, and that's the warlock character, right?
Yeah, sorry, the warlock character. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard he got a little bit of a rewrite.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool though.
Yeah.
It all sounds awesome, and again, it sounds like there's just like it could be a full-time job. Like you just play Baldur's Gate 3
Yeah.
for like
You can
3 years
do
straight.
yeah, like lore backstory stuff with people that know about all the things like you do. Or people can get into the the things that they home ruled or changed in the game and really min max in a it's basically the same thing. You can get the building blocks, but then there's tiny little differences that might like I said, the thief subclass having 2 bonus actions can possibly. I mean, just think about that with a sorcerer, right? Getting 2
Oh,
meta
wow.
magic things and then also multiclassing. And I don't know if you can multiclass 3 times. I might just be like 2. But if you
Mm.
can do 3, just think about, a sorcerer, thief, wizard that you don't need prerequisite stats either. So you can just put fully into charisma, right? And then having, 2 meta magics as bonus actions and just really bursting things down, or, having barbarians get a subclass that does a bonus action attack as well with a 2-hander. So you can just attack, multi-attack, bonus action attack again, 4 attacks, action surge. There's going to be some crazy stuff with a bunch of different things out there, and like that jump thing that I talked about, which I think they already toned down, which is good because it was like comical how silly it was. But yeah, there's going to be. The other number that I think is on the top of my head is they have like over 300 spells that are from D&D as well, and
Wow.
it goes up to level 12. So that's what is that? Is that 6th level spells, or is that? I think.
So yeah, so level 12, yeah, you'd have yes, you'd have six level. Yeah, because I think at level 11 is when you get 6 level spells. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So there's like that,
I got a pair of
and
cats crawling around behind me.
no, that's fine. It's I mean I have one right reversed. I have one right there. Oh gosh, I'm all right there too. So. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of combinations with spells, and there's like, I mean, obviously they made certain spells just make more sense for the game, or they don't have certain spells in the game. Like I doubt that they would have scry as an option, because that'd be really weird to get like a a preview of the game and just spoil yourself, and then like, okay, I don't know, I like stuff like that. I think they're not having every spell, obviously. Maybe they're adding homebrew spells, and I know some of the cantrips have changed a little bit for balancing reasons and gameplay reasons and stuff like that. So, but it has a lot. It's like it's D&D in a video game, the closest I've ever seen it. So
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's what I loved about the very first Baldur's Gate is like, it was a way to play D&D by yourself.
yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
And it does have multiplayer. But I think I touched on this before. And I researched it again. I don't think initially they're going to have a campaign editor tool. But I would be very surprised if they don't at least add it in the future, or if someone can mod it. So that's going to be another thing, is like being able to, go on Steam or whatever, and then find a campaign that's highly rated and be like, oh, someone made a Descent into Avernus. Download, and then run through this fully customed, mapped out campaign, and play a whole new game. So,
Yeah.
like you said, there's gonna be a lot of content on this. So,
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the things that the Divinity had, right? The Divinity Original Sin, they had an editor mode where you could actually like create your own,
right,
encounters and adventures and stuff like that.
Yeah. So they have the know-how. Now it's probably just going to be more advanced with all the stuff added into this game. So yeah,
that's wild. So I wonder if if there's enough mods at some point for Baldur's Gate 3, if that will become a competitor for D&D's new VTT. Like
Oh yeah,
If that
because it's very much like 3-dimensional type of thing, right? Like
right, like yeah, the VTT is basically, I mean, it's a VTT. You're playing D&D on a virtual tabletop, right?
right,
But Baldur's Gate 3 seems like it's going to be a even better looking version of that. And if it's so close to playing D&D, what's stopping you from just essentially replacing your, you know, Thursday night D&D game with playing Baldur's Gate 3?
yeah. Well, I guess the advantage of the Wizards VTT is going to be just being able to have your D&D Beyond sheet and all the books and stuff like that. Um, I have a feeling that if someone made a mod to be able to inject D&D Beyond into Baldur's somehow, they'd probably get like in trouble or something. I don't know. Like the people that
Yeah,
made those like Pokemon Emeralds or whatever, where it's like it was like their own version of Pokemon and they got DMCA'd. So
right.
I don't know. But
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what all people do with it. It sounds like an amazing game.
yeah,
You mentioned early on, you were answering a question and started to go off on a rabbit trail, and
yeah.
you said there was something really interesting you wanted to come back to. What was that?
Well, it was just so in the developing world, it's kind of funny because and this happened with Elden Ring, the Dark Soul from Software people, the people that made Dark Souls. Elden Ring was one of my favorite games of all time ever. In a way, it won Game of the Year and all these things. But there was so much work put into it and so much time and money. And then when they released it, it was a $60 game. And that was it. It wasn't like get the battle pass, get these microtransactions, get the, blah, blah, blah. And they're even putting out DLCs that were free. Well, kind of DLCs. They're doing like these arena things that you can go in PvP and stuff like that. Similar thing with Baldur's 3. And I should go back. People were pissed. Developers were mad that they were doing such a good job and not charging an arm and a leg extra for it, right? So they didn't want to be held by that same view, and instead, like companies that have a bunch of DLCs or microtransactions, they'd be like, we want to be justified to have these things in our game and charge people more, and not give them a fully released game.
Complaining that Elden Ring like set the bar too high. You're giving people too much for that price.
And that's the exact thing that they're saying about Baldur's 3 now too. With smaller developers, I don't think that they should be held to the same expectation whatsoever. A 2-person team can't do what Baldur's 3 is doing, right? Or they would have to devote their blood and soul to it if they could somehow manage to do that. That's very valid, and I don't think most people are going to expect small companies with their games to be the same as that. But the funny thing is that there's AAA companies that are saying the same things, where it's like, sorry, you're doing all this for just that price, and you're not having expected, you're not doing a season, battle pass, you're not doing microtransactions, you're not doing, DLCs that are going to be an extra $40 or anything like that. No, this is our game and this is how we're doing it, So they're going against the like futures or present now conventional norm of like making sure you have extra ways to charge people in the future by not having a fully fleshed out game. And maybe they'll do like, some charges in the future for, like a full Tasha's compendium, brand new adventures and new things that they're adding, kind of like, how you just buy a new book for D&D.
Right.
Or maybe they're not. Maybe they just straight up will add DLCs like, here's the, the expansion for Warlocks. You get Hexblade now, you get all these other features. They'll add, Artificer for free or something like that. Who knows what they're going to do? But it was just funny to me that they're doing such a good job and they're so passionate about it. And the AAA companies were mad that they're going to be looked at and held to the same expectation of not having microtransactions, not having season pass or battle pass, and, be just a $60 game still, which is still kind of hard. I still think, games were, when I was young, were, $50, $60. So to think that it's not like scaling up at least like 70 now or something nowadays is kind of crazy to me. But Yeah,
Yeah,
it's wild to see.
even the Dungeons and Dragons books are going up in price. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah. But yeah, that's crazy. I mean, they're kind of shaking the industry by saying, no, this is good content. We're just making a really good product,
Yeah.
and you know, you guys can suck it. We're gonna
Yeah.
be great at what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good for them. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I have a lot of respect for them, and I played a lot of Divinity 2. I have a couple hundred hours on that as well. And so yeah, it's gonna be I'm gonna be gone for like a month when that game comes out. Like don't message me, you know. So yeah.
You're gonna disappear into Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on today and telling us all about it. I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be amazing to see what all they've done with this game.
Yeah.
So,
And I guess, yeah, in closing, I definitely highly 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 recommend it if you know, like D&D specifically, but also like at least a 9.5 or if not a 10 for people, even if they don't play D&D. It's just a really good base game. And I'm hoping that, you know, if people play Baldur's 3, then they'll be interested in the system and then like, you know, look into D&D stuff and then start playing more. We'll get more players into D&D and realize like that whole world. So
yeah. Well, and Wizards of the Coast hasn't done a great job of marketing themselves lately. In fact, they seem to keep making things worse with their PR moves, right?
yeah.
But it would make total sense, and maybe I'll just do that. I'll just do some videos on it. But it would make total sense for Wizards to come out with a new Baldur's Gate adventure that you can run, you know, with your 5e campaign.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
already,
I'm
you
surprised
know,
like we didn't get, you know, a Baldur's 3 style, like they even had it for, you know, some Critical Role stuff of like Guide to Wild Mountain. There's like little adventures that you could do. So I'm surprised that they didn't line up something with the release of the game to be like a Baldur's 3 inspired adventure, and it has like, you know, the companions' names as like NPCs in the game and stuff like that, and maybe just like an act or two or whatever. It's very surprising that
yeah.
I didn't do that.
Well, I mean, Descent into Avernus, that adventure has a Baldur's Gate gazetteer in it. Like there's already, you know, I don't know, probably 60, 70 pages of that book that are just dedicated to what's in Baldur's Gate.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just take that gazetteer that they already have, and then write some new adventures, and then package that in like a, you know, a downloadable PDF or a, you know, access on D&D Beyond.
Right.
And it would be a great way to, you know, make some new Baldur's Gate adventures and attach it to, you know, all the lore that they already have written for Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Like I don't to me that seems like a no-brainer.
Right.
Um
And speaking
but
of lore and stuff like that, do you plan on making some like extra videos about lore stuff, like in with, you know, the Illithids or, you know, Avernus stuff, and kind of relating, and you include me in, like a person that has played the game multiple times now. I'm just like, oh, that's what that is. Cool. You know, I learned something new, right?
yeah, I'll probably, because I'll probably do at least a couple videos on the factions of Baldur's Gate, or like how to run an adventure in Baldur's Gate. Like that would totally make sense. And then of course, once the game comes out and actually see what all factions, because like the old Baldur's Gate games, like the Harpers were in there, the Zentarum were in there, the Flaming Fists,
Yeah.
like all these.
Flaming Fist is a thing.
Mhm.
I also saw, I think there's a Harper statue or something relating to Harpers as well that I remember off the top of my head. Yeah. So
Yeah, like Baldur's Gate 1, your character starts off as an orphan, and they're raised by the Harpers. Like that's how you get introduced to the Harpers. Is you don't know what they are when you start the game. You're just raised by what you thought was like this nice wizard guy.
Mhm.
And it turns out that, you know, he actually works for this, you know, secret organization that does good all across, you know, the realm, right?
Cool.
But yeah. Well, and we didn't even get into the Illithid stuff. Like that's a whole nother, like that's the driving story part of the game, is like your characters, like the character you make and the companions all have a tadpole in their head, right?
Yep. And that's
Yeah.
another really fun like interaction of the game too, that adds another choice to it, is that in the first act, at least, I don't know how far this goes or if this is the full experience, but you have dialogue options that you can use an illithid power, the tadpole, in your head to like overcome the stat challenge or the skill challenge, but it like gets you deeper into it. So you gain like this power afterwards the next day, and you're like gaining these abilities by you whenever you use it more. But are you becoming more taken over by it? And you're getting more dreams of this person talking to you, and that's like seems nice, but they're like, oh yeah, just give in. It's fine. It's fine. It's like, is that the tadpole talking to me in my dream? Like, so it's, but then you can like, or you can just like, you know, not give in, and then you don't get the powers or whatever. But it'd be interesting if like, can you just go so far and then you just become a mind flayer, game over type of thing, or whatever happens, you know? Like, I don't understand. Like, it's going to be interesting to find that part out too.
Yeah, well, that'll be really interesting because that was the final choice. I think you made. I think it was at the end of Baldur's 2, because in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, you have the blood of the god Bal.
Yeah,
so you're what they call a Bal spawn,
Mhm.
right? So I think it's how Baldur's Gate 2 ends. Is you get to choose to become either the avatar of Bal, and you become this evil god,
Oh wow.
or you surrender that power and like angels take it up to Mount Celestia or something like that.
Okay.
It's been years obviously since I played those games, but so similar kind of thing. Like you can become the god of murder. So in this you could, maybe it's the same kind of choice. Like at some point you get to choose to become a mind flayer or to get the tadpole out of your brain.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either, because there is a thing early on too where it's like you are in your camp and then one night you're kind of like woozy and walking, and there's like a little cinematic and the Githyanki character like comes out of the shadow ready to like strike at you, and just like basically just like, are you turning? And if you respond with like, yeah, I don't feel so good, they kill you. Like, and then it's like you see just like your companions fighting each other after that, and it's just like, oh, that's an option just to end the game. All right. Like, yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have stuff like that, you know?
That's cool.
And I know there's probably also a way to turn into a vampire as well through other things too. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's part of the D&D lore, right? The Gith absolutely hate the mind flayers. That's another big conflict, like the blood war between the devils and demons. There's a multi-planar, multiverse conflict between the Gith and the mind flayers.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. Cool. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10, everyone basically to play.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to wrap up, but thanks for coming on and talking about all this. That's really great to hear. I'm super excited to learn more about the game when it comes out for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll talk about it, if you want me to. So.
Yeah, we can definitely have you back after you disappear into the game for a month or two.
Come back out, just like eyes, just totally red all the time. I played through it 3 times. I saw every 174-hour cinematics. Yeah.
It's going to be the new version of the Satanic Panic, right? Like, don't play Baldur's Gate 3 or you'll become a mind flayer.
Right. Yeah. So, all right.
All right, man. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and tell us your thoughts about Baldur's Gate 3 and your experiences with the old games and what you're excited for. And thanks again, Mike, for being here and being our video game expert on the Dire Den.
Absolutely.